Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LFC Transfer Room. My name is Louis, and we're back for another live stream. We're continuing our streak. I don't know how long it's been going on for, but we've been doing well every night, 7:30, Liverpool through and through, and that is what you can look forward to here on the LFC Transfer Room. I'm joined today by Jack, Jay, and Neil, and we will be giving you a quick little run through. It's not quite a transfer central. That will be tomorrow with Charlie. You'll get on Wednesday with Charlie. You'll get all of the proper major news and reliability of sources, etc. But two main things have popped up today, which we're going to divulge into. That being this wild rumor that Gini Wijnaldum potentially would come back to us on loan. We'll talk about that now, and also Asensio. Rumours persisting, feels like it's starting to heat up. A lot of Spanish outlets talking about it. We'll have a look at some of those as well and whether they are reliable at this stage. But first of all, Jack, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. Before we got on the stream, I was handling my bloody nose, so my one hope is that it doesn't interrupt the stream, interrupt the flow of things, so to speak. But other than that, I'm doing well. It's been an interesting few days in Liverpool news, and I'm excited to kind of dig into it with you guys.
Absolutely. Jay, bit of camera troubles, but apart from that, how are you this evening?
All good, mate. Yeah, apart from that. Yeah, good, mate. Enjoying the good weather that we're not used to.
Yeah, I'll let you figure that out. Neil, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Like Jay, enjoying the good British weather. It's a lovely day today. So, yeah, and a few interesting stories out there, which I'm sure we'll come on to.
Absolutely. For anybody who is just joining or is new, please do like the video. It massively helps us out. Please subscribe to the channel as well for all your Liverpool content. I know it's tough without the football, but we're here to try and fill that hole just a little bit. And you can also, yep, there we go. I thought that might happen. I'm sure he'll come back, but we'll freestyle it. So yeah, please do get involved, and you can of course also get involved in the Discord server or become an actual member, which is a nice way to support the channel and help to get some much needed funding into our content. We're short paid. So let's hope this isn't a theme, but Jay's back again. And yeah, there we go. Right, so Wijnaldum. Fabrizio Romano has come out today and said, all of the news is fake, so don't worry about it. So let's move on to Asensio. No, I thought even though there's a massive, it has been shut down by Romano. I think there's still an interesting topic to be discussed there about, would you take him if he was available? And sort of the downfall of Wijnaldum that we've seen in a couple of short years. He's really fallen off where people thought he might go, what he was doing at Liverpool. And he finds himself in quite a precarious position with needing to be very careful about what he does next to protect his legacy, to get a big money move and to go somewhere where he's going to be playing and to try and rebuild his career a little bit. Jack, just give me your initial thoughts on when this rumor first came out, because it's all moved quite quickly from here's the rumor to Romano coming out and say it's all rubbish. But what was your general feeling towards it?
I've always been a fan of Wijnaldum. I think that he was unfairly, in his last season at least, unfairly had a lot of the issues of Liverpool at that time painted onto him. I think he would be absolutely brilliant in the midfield with Thiago and Fabinho in terms of just an option. Look, if he's a stopgap to Jude Bellingham, I'm not sure there's a better stopgap. He knows the club. He knows how things work. And I think, in my eyes, it would be, when I kind of had my gut feeling, right? I spoke on a stream the other day that I imagined us keeping Oxlade-Chamberlain because he would be a stopgap to Jude Bellingham, where he is cheap. He's just paying him a salary, and he just kind of is the guy who's the option that you have in the midfield. But I would imagine it'd be Wijnaldum or Oxlade-Chamberlain. I cannot imagine both of them coexisting, because it just seems like you have redundancy at that point. You have too many guys who you feel like, shouldn't be having as many minutes as in next season's campaign. And especially after the Taki quote today about, his the match that he played in, he felt weren't very important, and there wasn't as much, care about them, and how it kind of impacts your ability to stay up to condition, stay up to fitness. I can't imagine both Oxlade-Chamberlain and Wijnaldum being at Liverpool next year. It's even harder to imagine Wijnaldum there because Fabrizio just absolutely dunked on the rumors. He said just fake. Like, how many times do you see Fabrizio or any big name journalist just label a story as fake? So I'd be very surprised if it happened. It's decently logical, but we should just be signing a midfielder that actually pushes us forward. Is a bit different. He is the industrious, keeps the ball, but isn't too progressive, isn't too incisive. I think we need to get someone different than him, if I'm being quite honest. I wouldn't complain, but it also just feels like we're kind of just plateauing rather than improving.
Yeah. Hello to everybody who's just getting into the live chat. Good to see some familiar faces, some new faces as well. Jay, same sort of question to you for your initial reaction to getting that news. Jack talks about, it feels like obviously Wijnaldum is a former player, but the people that we're linked to potentially plateauing our midfield, and Oxlade-Chamberlain maybe staying. So what was your general feeling towards that? Would you ever go back to someone like Wijnaldum?
There's kind of two sides to it. One is that it's underwhelming that we'd be going back for a player who's already moved on and doesn't bring anything new to the table in terms of creativity. He's reliable, which is a big thing for us with the midfield that we've got, because it is quite injury prone. If it was a loan, I'd do it. I wouldn't be bothered by it. I'd be happy with it, but for me, Eriksen on a free would make much more sense than that, because if he had a good season and played enough games, you could extend that. A loan's just what Jack's already said. He's a stopgap for whoever's coming in. What's the point in signing a stopgap? I'd rather have Eriksen for a year and maybe an additional year if it worked out the first year.
I'm just laughing. Sorry to interrupt. The anonymous and just the silhouette of Jay is just.
That's all I could think about. I was just thinking of like those. I was thinking of BBC News when they interview like a top drug dealer and they can't show his face or something.
He's like, I can't.
Need a darky voice.
It's need a dark voice filter. Yeah.
It's like he's Wijnaldum's cousin. He doesn't want to get outed.
And Neil, just to cap off the initial reaction to that rumor when it first came out.
Yeah, it's interesting what Jay mentioned about Eriksen, because I did an article earlier about fans reacting to the news about Wijnaldum, and Eriksen's name came up time and time again as someone that they would be more interested in. So I look at two things. One, there's rumours that we're going to go to a 4-2-3-1. So I think we have quite a lot of numbers in midfield to cater for a switch of formation. If we stick with the 4-3-3, Gini primarily played left side, didn't he? And for me, that's the best position for Thiago, and also Naby Keita as well. So I just think there's too many there. Too many. I think we've got 8 or 9 players that can possibly play in midfield. So unless someone leaves, I don't see an opening for anybody, let alone Gini Wijnaldum. We don't have a great record for going back for players that have decided to leave as well. So I can't see any way it will happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a big part for Jurgen Klopp, isn't it? He wants people who are committed to the cause. Jack, were you going to interject with something?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say, that right-handed side 8 is what I think could be the most, our signing could really push us forward the most, because the ideal depth, I imagine, is defensive mid, is Fabinho with Henderson as a backup. That's my ideal. I think a backup defensive mid would be great to kind of have Henderson a bit more loose in terms of where you could fit in to slide around, but I think that's fine defensive midfield depth. Then the left-sided 8, Thiago with Keita as a backup, with Jones as a further backup. I think that's absolutely sensational depth, because it allows for 2 guys who are slightly injury prone to be backed up by a guy who could make a big leap this year. That's great depth in my opinion. And that right-handed 8, if you add someone a bit more dynamic, almost a guy like Carvalho or Elliott, who can drive forward with the ball, really good in tight spaces, progressive, Wijnaldum's good in tight spaces, but he just lacks the ability in those to be progressive and tenacious with making things happen going forward. I think Jude Bellingham is perfect because he has that creative gene in him, as well as the ability to just get stuck in, cover for teammates and stuff like that. So it just feels like going into next year without kind of adding someone in that right-handed 8 spot is weird. It would just be kind of weird. And I just don't think Wijnaldum would cut it there. Wijnaldum for me would be just a depth option on the left, and then that just hampers Jones's development, which feels like a setback for me.
He never played well on the right when he was put there, but to back him up a little bit, to give him a little bit of support, I do think the role that he played, which was a vital role, but was a very cautious one, I think was probably what he was asked to do, because I think he had a phenomenal spell for the national team where I think he played as a 10, where he couldn't stop scoring goals. So I do think in terms of his ability to create and score goals, he was slightly hampered by the role that he was asked to do for the team that he did very, very well. You try getting the ball off him, you know, he's a very difficult player to get the ball off. But so I do think there is an element of that to it. But right side, 31 now, it's coming off poor season and a half. I just don't see it.
I want to go back to his first season for Liverpool because he had 6 goals and 8 assists. And the year before that for Newcastle, he had 11 goals, 5 assists, and that was right. And before season before that for Eindhoven, he had 14 goals, 3 assists. So he has goal scoring in him. We've seen it at the national team. Only way I'd kind of really back Wijnaldum to come back is if it was, all right, Genie, you're not coming back as the guy you were in your last spell. We want you to be the number 10, basically. I think he could be decent. Like it's a low risk, high reward in that sense. But if he's brought in to be just kind of a decent option who just keeps things compact, simple, I just think it's going to be, again, a regression to the year before last.
Yeah, I think the general consensus in this stream, and you know, from what I've seen on Twitter and out and about, is generally quite somewhere between we probably shouldn't go back to I'm not particularly fussed. I don't think anyone's crying out for a Genie Wijnaldum to come back. At the same time, I don't think anyone would be particularly peed off if we decided to go for him. I think that's always the way he was kind of seen, wasn't it? That's kind of who he was at Liverpool. He was the shadow who, you know, did the little bits that most people didn't tend to see. But obviously, because Romano has come out and said it's not happening at this point, it's all fake. I kind of just want to turn our attention to like Wijnaldum as a player and how things have gone for him. Of course, signing that new deal around about £160,000 a week with Paris Saint-Germain, but things not turning out the way that he would have expected. He's been mainly on the bench for PSG, only starting 18 games in the league, and recently, I'm not sure in what poll, but was named flop signing of the year. I mean, sorry, I almost called you anonymous then, Jay. This is not what we would have thought would have happened. You know, some people were glad to be rid of him. Some people were sad to see him go. But I think most people thought he'd be pretty decent at PSG, no?
You're right, Jim. Yeah, I think it's just gone worse and worse for him. Obviously, when he first signed it, I think he said something about he weren't getting on with the South Americans. He was sort of getting singled out in training, kind of like on his own. And now to get flop of the season. I mean, who wants that? You move to a club and you get seen as the worst signing of the whole division. And I think it's a bit harsh on him because, like you said, he started with 18 games. You know, you're not getting much of a chance to show what you're worth. And I've got to be honest, mate, I loved Wijnaldum when he was at Liverpool. I think beginning of the season, when we weren't managing games very well, I thought we missed him. Because that's what he's brilliant at, was game management. He's the exact type of midfielder you want for that. And I just felt that in our run to the Champions League, there was games against City and Spurs when no one really wanted the ball, and he was just always happy to say, go on, giz it here, and he was always calm on it. So I like Wijnaldum, mate. I hope he he gets a move and can sort his career out, because like you said, it's going downhill for him ever since he left, and I do like him.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, Neil, that Jay brings up. I mean, does Wijnaldum, well, did Wijnaldum do what people think James Milner comes on and does? Like, in those tight situations where there's 1 or 2 goals in it, just opens himself up, gets the ball, and is difficult to get it off of. Because I feel like that's what the people who like James Milner think, that he comes on and does really well. But that was Gini Wijnaldum's biggest strength, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm not convinced Milner does do it that well. He can be.
Well, no. But I mean, some people think that he's great for bringing on
Yeah.
in those situations.
Yeah, but I'd love to have a Wijnaldum to come on and hold the ball for 15 minutes when you're in the lead, because, as I say, the amount of times he got the ball, how many times did you see him get dispossessed? It was very, very rare. So, yeah, I think in terms of that role, I think he'd be fantastic. I'd love Gini when he was at Liverpool. I thought he was brilliant. I think he's a great character. It's just a shame the way it's gone, but yeah, I think he could do the job of Milner and probably do it better. Milner, you think he's coming on with a cool, calm head, and then the first thing you're doing, you're seeing him kick someone up in the air or bursting forward, trying to create something. So Wijnaldum is a more sensible player, and I think a more calm player than probably what Milner is.
I mean, Jack, obviously there's a lot of factors that have gone into this and created this situation, but do you think this is more of a reflection of, I mean, I know this isn't the answer, but as Gini as a professional, or do you think it's more of a reflection of PSG? Because I think that their recruitment generally has been pretty poor. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to work out Neymar's a good player, and if you've got the money, go and sign him. And it didn't take a genius to work out Mbappe was going to be a great talent. So if you've got the money, go and sign him. But, you know, the midfield has always been their biggest problem. And I thought it was a bit of a match made in heaven, and he could be someone to help take them to the next level, especially in Europe, which is where they want to be strengthening. I was very surprised to find just how quickly he kind of fell out of favour there.
Yeah, it was a weird one because, you know, you've got these utterly world-class footballers up front. Angel Di Maria, Kylian Mbappe, Lionel Messi, Neymar, like that as a front four, if you played them together, has absolutely zero pressing, but they are sublime when they get the ball. So you would think a guy like Wijnaldum, who's comfortable doing the dirty work, covering for guys and just covering that ground, like that's the kind of thing that would be unglamorous and unsexy. And to call him the flop of the year, for me, was like, really? Like, by what barometer? Was he really that bad for PSG that he was the worst signing in Liga? Because I would argue a guy like Lionel Messi, who had such tectonic expectations and scored, 6 league goals? How is that not flop of the season? You have the guy who was the greatest player of all time coming in and absolutely stinking up the place in terms of his expectations. I think anybody else comes in with those and gets those kind of numbers, they're decent. I'm going to pull them up right now just so I'm not mischaracterizing Messi. But, like, I just don't know how you can look at Wijnaldum just doing the dirty work. Like, Messi had 6 goals, 14 assists. It's very good. You know, it's 20 goals contributions. That's really, really good. But if you said that like, if you asked someone at the beginning of the year, they're thinking 40 in France. You know, he played 26 matches in the worst league of the top 5. So I don't know. I just think that there are dozens of issues at PSG. Wijnaldum is not the leading one there. There's, like, they have Mbappe and I'm running the show, so I'm fascinated with what happens next with that. So,
but his status at the two clubs is completely different, isn't it? Because at Liverpool, he was in the leadership group, wasn't he? I think he was the 4th man behind Henderson, Milner, and Virgil. So he's gone from that to being having less status in that PSG dressing room. The contrast between the two dressing rooms and the style of the team is, you know, he's gone from a disciplined dressing room where everybody works from the team to a dressing room that's probably not that disciplined and is full of individuals. And then there's the feel about the place as well. Playing at Anfield against playing in front of the PSG supporters, it's a completely. I'm sure it's a completely different feeling. So, I think all those factors added together, Reminds me of when Fernando Torres went to Chelsea. You've gone from a very atmospheric place to somewhere that's almost a bit soulless.
Yeah, I mean, Jay, what's your take on all of that? As Neil said, he was part of that core leadership group, third or fourth choice captain, a massive part of what Klopp wanted from his midfield, and I'm sure Klopp definitely wanted to keep him, but I think it was a money issue, wasn't it? What's next for him? Can he rebuild himself under Kylian Mbappe, or does he need to move on and try and rebuild somewhere else?
It depends, mate, because it's a big point you make. Obviously, he was one of the more high-ranking leaders at Liverpool, but he was also the Dutch vice captain. He didn't even get picked in the last team. So if I was him, I wouldn't be staying at Paris, regardless of what Mbappe wants to do. The problem with PSG is very similar to that of United. They don't sign players for the coach. They sign it for the commercial or because the fans want them. If you watch PSG, I watched them both last season and they're shocking. They're absolutely awful. The front three just stand at the middle of the pitch and just wait for the game to play around. And Messi doesn't run. Neymar doesn't run. Mbappe does, to be fair. Mbappe does the work of the other two. But that's just a toxic dressing room. You can tell a mile away. They're all just multi-millionaires who care about money more than anything. They're all on ridiculous wages. Their lowest paid players probably one of the better paid players at any other league. You can just see the toxicity there. And Wijnaldum's a model pro, so he needs to go to a club where there's a work ethic. I think even a move back to Newcastle would be good for him, because Eddie Howe won't have any of that nonsense in his teams either. So he just needs to go somewhere where he'll feel valued again, mate. And I think PSG is just a horrible place for a proper professional footballer, someone like Milner, Wijnaldum, to play at. I think you put Milner or Henderson in that PSG dressing room, they wouldn't last 5 minutes.
Well, let us know in the live chat. Obviously, to recap, there were rumours of Wijnaldum potentially coming back to Liverpool on a loan, getting away from PSG. Fabrizio Romano has since come out and pretty much rubbished those, putting an end to that. But just, free reign, would you take Wijnaldum back? Let us know in the live chat. On loan, permanently, half his wages, his whole wages, whatever. Let us know. And make sure whilst you're here, you do like the video and you do subscribe to the channel as well for all of your daily Liverpool content. Let's move on to the second and final major topic of the video, which is Marcus Asensio, Real Madrid. Rumours have been heating up, simmering, starting to kick on a little bit. Confirmation from Mundo Deportivo, Diario AS and Sport all saying Liverpool are interested in bringing Asensio as Klopp plans to complete his attack force with him, which I think is a bizarre statement considering our attack at the minute. Jack, I'll start again with you. Your initial rumours to this. I think a lot of people who watch us are very keen on this Asensio rumour and would like to get him through the door. Does that work for you?
This is going to kind of serve as like a barometer for before I look at the stats, before I dig into some of the tape, because I'm planning to do that later today for a player analysis. So this is kind of just my gut feeling right now. And it's like the fee reported was, 40 million euros, thereabouts. It's not terrible in today's market. It's about what we pay for a lot of the guys we bring in. He's the kind of guy who had really, really high potential. Now they didn't live up to it, but he had to fight for his place in the Madrid side, and for one reason or another, it didn't pan out. He still has unbelievable talent. That doesn't go away. I just don't know quite how he would fit. Could he be that like Harvey Elliott right side at 8? Could he be Salah's backup? If he's brought in to kind of push both positions, that's an interesting signing that does push the needle for us and does make us give us a different threat. He's basically a more, not more advanced, but more further developed version of Harvey Elliott. So I think that it would be interesting and a potential goal threat from the midfield. So I can't say I'm against it, because I think we need a player. We need a signing. And if that's the signing, I'm not against it. I would prefer Bowen. I'd prefer Rafinha. I'd prefer a guy like Mason Mount who could play as that right-sided 8. I know he's not really linked at all in the slightest, but I think there's many players I prefer before him. But as I've seen with this transfer committee, beggars can't be choosers. And if he signs, I'll figure out a way to make him the next coming of, I don't know, Lionel Messi in the midfield. So we'll see. I have low expectations for it, but I'm really interested to see what happens when I actually dig into some of the deeper stats, because this is kind of just a baseline surface level opinion I have right now.
Yeah, Jay as well. I'm not expecting anybody to be an expert on Asensio, but in our current state, you know, a lot of people saying a midfielder needs to be the priority. Is Asensio the answer to that?
Not for me, no. I think Jack just said there's a lot of players I'd take over Asensio, and he isn't really a midfielder as such. He gets through out on the wing more than anything, and it might just be me, but I always feel uneasy signing players who are happy to sit on a bench for like 3 to 4 years. I never like making them types of signings where you just get people who sign for Real Madrid because they're Real Madrid, but they don't ever play. Like Kovacic, he signed, but he didn't get a sniff. Isco, in and out the team. These players who are happy to just sit around for 3, 4, 5 years without really kicking the ball, I don't want them anywhere near my club, to be honest. And Asensio falls into that bracket for me.
Neil, just looking at some of his stats from last season: Champions League 8 matches, 1 goal; La Liga 31 games, 10 goals. It looks like he would be more of an attacking option rather than someone to fill a hole in the midfield. Is that really someone that we need? Is it worth spending an extra 30 million on Asensio? Is that the person that we put our money into in a position that we probably feel pretty strong in already?
Not for me. No, I don't think so. So, I think it's too much for someone that's probably not going to be a starter in the team. Maybe he could be back up to Salah and possibly do a job in that right-sided midfield area. So they may see it as a sort of a dual purpose thing, but not for me. I mean, he's a talented player. He does score goals. I think he scored for Spain in the last international break as well. But I think his best form is sort of 2 or 3 years, 3 maybe 4 years back. So, and he doesn't start in that Real Madrid team, and that position on the right for them, you know, was a bit of a problem. And Fede Valverde ended up playing there. But they've had Rodrigo in there, so he's not commanding, you know, a regular place in their team. So I just think it's a lot of money for someone. You know, he could explode when he comes to us. I think someone like Kovacic, to be fair to him, I think he's outstanding for Chelsea, and he was used sparingly.
Yeah, they did
at Madrid, but yeah, it just doesn't feel like the right type of signing for me. I think, and I think we touched on this yesterday, I think we need to see what happens leading up to Christmas with Salah, and then make a decision as to whether we buy a serious player as his kind of successor, like a Jared Bowen or someone like that. But I think we need to give it that time. In the meantime, we've got players that can fill in on the right. You know, I wouldn't rule out Dias being pulled across to the right at some point. He's done it in certain stages of certain games. So I'd rather save the money and invest on either Salah's successor if he's going to go, and or that right-sided central midfield player, but someone that's going to come in and be a regular in that spot.
I think for me, though, sorry to interrupt, Louis, is the way it may make sense is you think about what is our next priority of a signing for the next 12 months. And it's got to be Salah's contract or replacement. And it's got to be that right-sided 8, which is, I think, the weakest spot in our squad, at least from my perspective. If Asensio can cover either position, he would, I think, free us up next summer to target what we really need to target, depending on his performance. So say he lights the world up from that right-sided 8, and almost in a 4-2-3-1 playing as a 10, we kind of have a different dynamic. He helps us break down the low blocks. He covers that position. Then maybe we can spring the money on Salah's replacement rather than Bellingham. Or maybe he shows decent prowess as a backup for Salah, and then we can spring the money on Bellingham, and we have Asensio who kind of replaces Salah. I'm thinking in the FSG pragmatic terms. I wouldn't do that. That would not be my decision. But I also recognize that I have to take things into how Liverpool decide to do their business. And I can imagine that this is the kind of thing they're thinking about is, well, what if we brought in Asensio? It would kind of cover two birds with one stone and give us more options and more flexibility next summer, because say Bellingham is too expensive, or maybe he drops off a cliff, say he has an ACL tear or whatever happens, and your ideal guy isn't an option. A million things could happen in 12 months. Look at Mohamed Salah and Sadio Mane 12 months ago. 12 months ago, Sadio Mane, I think, was in a pretty bad rut. Even 6 months ago, he was in a pretty bad rut. Now we're devastated he's going. So it's really hard to pinpoint, exactly what Asensio would cover and what he would do. I trust Klopp, but again, I see that coming from I don't know how to pronounce Osik. I don't know about Bukayo Saka. That'd be he's my dream. Bukayo Saka. I think he's unrealistic. I think he's too pricey. I think we'll be priced out of him. But
oh god, bloody hell! Just nearly choked on something. Then before we do carry on, still a little bit more to talk about. Thank you to everybody who is still joining and starting to get involved as well. Please do like the video; it massively helps us out, and please do subscribe as well. So to talk about where Asensio could cover, just to give a bit of a better idea about that. Last season for Real Madrid, he played 25 games on the wing. In the base of the midfield, once, and as a 10, he played there 4 times. The season before that, he played 25 games on the wing, 2 games as a 10, and 0 as a midfielder. During his whole Madrid career, he's played 5 games in midfield. So I think there's some people, maybe not in this stream actually, but in streams gone by, who've been really keen on Asensio because they think he's dynamic enough to cover multiple positions. But I don't know. There's more context to it. Obviously, Real Madrid are stacked in midfield in terms of, they've got Kris and Modric playing there, and Casemiro as well, who are obviously miles ahead of Asensio. So that's obviously a big part of it. But, it does seem like he's a winger. And Jay, I just don't see any need for another winger at this point. Obviously Salah might leave next year, but it can't be the priority at this point. It has to be a midfielder, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't see how you could spend 35 million or however much on a player up top that you don't need when you are crying for the central midfielder, in my opinion. I wouldn't even entertain talking about forwards unless Salah was going, which I've said many times. If he doesn't sign the contract within a week before the Charity Shield game, I'd sell him, but that's another discussion. So no, for me, mate, any big money signings now or any decent fee signings, it has to be in the middle of the park, not a winger. We've got arguably one of the best front lines in Europe, so midfield for me is the main place it needs to be strengthened.
Jack, £34 million. Final thoughts on this one? He's offered to you for £34 million. Do you take him?
Well, when you hit me with the facts, he never played at midfield. I'm like, ooh, that was an uneducated take right there for me. So I definitely think that it is.
I think it's a common misconception now. It's not just you. There's a lot of people think that.
And that's just me speaking from, he's left-footed. Maybe he could be Harvey Elliott. It's a pretty lazy take, and I think it's not totally unfair. It would be different. He could offer a different option. He's okay. If it's between him and nothing, I'm taking him. That's not a great statement of intent, though. I would prefer other options, personally.
Jay, £34 million. I don't want to limit you too much by saying it's him or nobody, but even then, is it worth adding another? You almost have too many cooks in the kitchen then up top, don't you?
Sort of, mate. I can see what Jack's saying as well. Asensio can play in central midfield. He might not have done much for Madrid, but he is capable of playing there. So we just give you that versatility, and for 35 million, it's that. I mean, as mad as it sounds, that's not a huge transfer these days. So if it was nothing or him, and it didn't impact on whatever central midfielder we've got targeted for next season, whether that be Bellingham or Danella or whoever else, then yeah, I'd do it. But if it impacted getting a proper central midfielder next season, then no, I wouldn't touch him.
That's a really good comment right there that you just put on the screen about why would we spend literally double Taki Minamino, who is just a better option, I think, for what he would offer. Can play anywhere across the front three, has been great in small doses. It's a downgrade for more money. It doesn't feel like good business to me. I would prefer Minamino kind of having a increased role than Asensio being brought in, and I'd spend that money elsewhere. But again, like I said, if there's literally no other option besides Asensio, I would do it. But that's really the only scenario I find myself tempted towards him for. So,
yeah, same.
Louis, you're muted. I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
Thank you, Neil. I mean, after spending like what £64 million plus add-ons on Núñez, 34 million suddenly sounds a lot cheaper. But as the boys have alluded to, it's a lot of money for somebody who isn't going to come in and be a starter, because that was 30 to 40 million was around Mane, around Salah, and they were straight into the starting lineup. That price again, even with inflation, for a backup at this point, I don't think anybody sees him breaking through straight away. Is that good value for money?
No, I don't think it is. I think he's only got 1 year left on his deal.
Oh, bloody hell! Well, that's even worse then.
I believe so. I'd have to check that.
I'll check for you.
I think that's the case. I think the other thing that you need to consider as well is, you bring him in, are you going to limit the opportunities for the likes of Elliott that potentially would play if an Asensio wasn't there? So Elliott, we know, is comfortable in that right-sided midfield position. I thought when he played against Southampton on the right wing, I thought he did very well, actually. So there's also that there's a potential cost of preventing the growth of others like him. A bit longer term, you got Cader Gordon as well. So I just think that amount of money for a player with 1 year left on his deal, that's going to come in, not be a starter, and possibly hamper the growth of some of our talented youngsters, it just doesn't make sense.
Well, I think we'll call it a day on that one. It's been a nice, concise stream. I think we've covered a lot, and a lot of people getting their opinions in the live chat as well, which has been good. Great to see, actually. But there's plenty more content to come this week as well. We'll have a chat room for you tomorrow, so make sure you're around 7:30 for that. Wednesday will be the Transfer Central again. Thursday, we'll wait and see. But Friday should be a debate room with Jack to my right and Charlie as well. They'll be debating Mo Salah. What is it? Keep or stay, or like or dislike?
It's me flying over to England, and we're going to do a boxing match. And whoever wins, that's the decision. We either sell Salah right now, or we give him every penny the club has in the profits. That's the stakes of the boxing match.
And Jack and Charlie are not afraid to disagree with each other. They're not afraid to get personal sometimes. So let's it should be a good one. So plenty of content to keep you going before the season starts to ramp up again, with pre-season less than 2 weeks away, I want to say now. So make sure you do like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to stick around. Tick the bell notification so you know whenever we post a video or go live. You can join our memberships to get exclusive access to badges that go next to your name to show your support. And also your very kindly donated money goes straight back into the channel to provide you with more expert content from the likes of us. Thank you very much to Jack, Jay, and Neil for joining. Thank you to everybody in the live chat. This has been the LFC Transfer Room, and we will see you in the next video. Take care.